uh, and then it is deviating from that. That means it's actually called as a, we say that it is a type of intrusion detection, where we detect the intrusion on the basis of some behavior. So in this way, one of the way is we have discussed also that we will define different rules also, which are used to detect particular attack. Are we also having some other methods as we discuss as well? For example, we have a model where we have a data set which contains the legitimate user or legitimate data. So we train that model with that data set, or we train that model with the data that is coming into the network or into the system. And when once any data which is actually changing behavior, or any user which is changing the behavior that was trained to the system or trained to the model, then it is also considered that that could be an intruder, or that could be an attack. So in this way, we have a different types of you can say intrusion detection methods, or intrusion uh, detection techniques, which are used to analyze particular take, or which are used to detect particular intruder or attack.
Okay, sir. Sir, I have a problem about my attendance. I have sent you the screenshot, but in your subject I have 00 attendance, sir. Can you kindly solve this error, sir?
Okay, I have not updated tenants, so you I will update that. Then you can see that it is okay.
Sir, did you check the screenshot I have sent to you?
So I received the message. Uh, you're asking about the tenants. So then when I update the tenants, then you can see that.
And sir, I need your numbers because I am working on the project network security systems. So how can I contact you? If you don't mind, so can you share me your email address, sir?
Yeah, I can also share with you the email address, and you can ask also my contact number from CR as well. So
Yes, sir.
I
Yes.
send you an email also. You can send the assignment on that email as well. So I send the email to you yesterday as well. So you can send me if you have any queries or any question you need to ask. You can send me on that.
Okay, sir. You can share your email address right now, sir. Thank you so much.
I've already shared with you, but again, if you want, then
Yes, sir.
yes. Is there any other question?
What is the advantage of a usage of a packet filter, sir?
Actually, here the filtering of the data that is done, or monitoring of the data that is done at the different layers. So if any data has the particular address, so that is received by the receiver, so we can uh, we can look at that particular data which is received by the receiver. Either that particular data is an intruder or it is a legitimate user. So there's a way of monitoring that user with the help of that. So we will monitor that user on that basis as well. So we have also some other types of filtering as well. So whenever any data that is entering into the system, first it is monitored at the network layer. So its source and destination address are monitored. Then when it is allowed to enter into the system, so then it is actually its application layer is monitored, its TCP layer is monitored. So in this way, there are the different layers of monitoring of the particular application. our particular data, our particular data which is coming into the network, our particular user which is accessing to the network. So we have different privileges defined for that particular user. So we will define that on the basis of that. As for that, we need to have different rules which are defined in the firewalls.
Sir, how we find the inside and outside intruder in the system, sir?
So we have a firewall installed on the router, on the gateway. So it monitors both ingoing as well as outgoing data. So it monitors that if any data that is coming into the network, it's it monitors its packet, its application layer, its TCP layer, and at the receiver and any data that is going out of the network, it also monitors that, or it also filters that. So this is actually the way used by the router which is installed into the network to to monitor the data, or to monitor the traffic that is coming into the network, and to monitor the traffic that is going out of the network.
Okay, sir. Thanks, sir.
So this figure further explain about the different firewalls installed at different layers. For example, they are installed at the network level, network layer. So that is installed on the router, that is installed on the gateway, for example, that is working uh, on filtering particular application. So in this way, we have a different data that is coming into the network, or that is being out of the network. So this router, or the device which is connecting the network to other network, is actually filters that data that is coming into the network, that filters the data that is going out of the network. So in this way, we have different filtering or different monitoring rules which are defined in the network, and we also define how these different rules which are going to monitor the particular data that is coming into the system, or the data that is going out of the system. So this figure is explaining that how we can do that. So in this way, we can also uh, look for a particular address, that either that particular address is actually a legitimate address or not, or that is a spoofed address which is used by an intruder to enter into the system. Means there's a possibility that intruder may use a legitimate address of the network, and then he sends the data with that address, and then he will send with that as if it is a actual user, or as it is, or as it is if it is a legitimate user. So in this way, the intruder can have a different filtering, different addresses. He can use those different addresses, and he can send the data to other users, and that particular address can be used to be filtered by a particular, you can say, user or particular device which is installed in the network. Like for example, as we discussed that the attacker can use a particular address which is the legitimate address, which is the actual address used by the network, and that is a legitimate address, and he can access that address, and he can use that address and can send the data to other system, or can send the data to other network, for example. So in this way, we have different interfaces which are defined. For example, the interface is defining the data which is coming into the network, and the interface which is defining the data which is going out of the network. So in this way, we have different types of you can say data which is coming into the network, or the data which is going out of the network. So we will define different rules for that. For example, as you can see, there are the different rules defined for the source address, and different rules for the define which are defined for the destination address. For example, if any data that is sent it to other system that is using particular source address, for example, that is blocked here, or if any data that is actually any address is given an access to the system. For example, if it is uh, to access to the particular you can say network, or particular system in the network, so that then it's given an access to the system. Or for example, if it is actually going to access particular application, like it's sending an email, or sending an email to other system, or sending an email to other user, for example. So it is given an access to the email server, for example, to send an email or to receive an email from other systems. So in this way, we have different types of systems which are used by the, you can say, different intrusion detection methods, or different firewalls which are defined here. And then we have we also need to define different rules for the data which is coming into the network, and we also need to define the rules for the data which is going out of the network. So in this way, we can have different types of data which is also used by the particular you can say source address and particular destination address. When we define particular source address and destination address, that particular source address is actually accessing to the system, that particular destination address that is entering into the system. So we define different rules for that, that either that particular addresses should be given an access to the system or not. Or for example, if it is going to access to another system, it is a particular system having a particular address, so it should be given an access to other system or not. So in this way, we define different rules for that, and we define different rules in the firewalls as well. So if we are using different devices, like which are defining different rules, like for example routers, or some other devices like gateways. So how many devices which can be used? So either we can use a single device, or you can use a separate device for incoming data or outgoing data. There's a possibility that there could be a router which can filter the incoming data, or which can monitor the incoming data, or there could be a router which can monitor the outgoing data, or which can monitor the data which is sent from the, you can say, from the user inside the network, or to the user which is outside the network. So in this way, we have a different devices which are installed into the system, and we define different rules for that. That either that particular data which is sent it to the data is which is sent it to other system or not. So we define the rules for that. And then we have different rules, as we discussed, like different firewalls which are defined into the system. Like for example, here we can identify with the help of these different rules which are defined, that either particular address which is going to access to the system, so it is a legitimate address, or it is a spoofed address, or that is actually the address that is used by the intruder or by the attacker to access to the system. So in this way, we have different rules which are defined here, and which are defined, as we discuss, at different layers, at the network layer, at the application layer, and at the transport layer. For example, uh, we have if we say that uh, it's a it's a data that is filtered at the network layer, that could be in the form of a packet, or if we filter the particular data that is filtered, that is monitoring particular application, for example. So that particular application is actually could be an email, or could be an other type of file, for example, FTP protocol or SMTP, or it could be a web application, for example, like HTTP protocol or some other protocol, which is used to access to the other system, which is used to access the services of the particular other system. So in this way, we need to define different rules for that, and different rules are defined on the basis of that the particular user is identified, either that particular user is a legitimate user which is going to access the system, or it is an intruder or an attacker which is going to access the system. So if it is an intruder, or if it has been identified as an intruder, or it has been identified as an attacker, then it is actually given, it should be limited. It should be given the access to the system, or it should not be given the access to the system, or we should limit the access of that particular user which is accessing to the system, and which has been identified as an intruder or as an attacker. So in this way, we have different architectures for that. Like for example, here the different architectures of such type of systems are defined or explained here further. For example, we have different other different network for example, of our organization, for example, or if we have other network maybe which is connecting the network to the public network, for example. So that could be, we say that it could be a dual home host system, for example. If the particular user is actually given an access to the system. So before it is given an access to the system, it should be monitored by some proxy network, some proxy server, for example. When it is monitored by some proxy server, and if it is allowed to give an access to the system, or if it is a legitimate user, then it should be given an access to the system. Or if it is an intruder, or if it is an attacker, then it should not be given an access to the system. So in this way, we have different different types of users which are used to access to the system. So like in the same way, we have also some other types of routes, for example, can be used to connect to other systems, for example. So it could be a data that is used to send by using different routes. It can send the data using the same routes. So if it is using a different routes, so then it is said to be it's asymmetric routes, or asymmetric type of sending of the data and receiving of the data. Or for example, if it is actually using same routes, then it is said to be a symmetric, you can say, routes. So we can send the data through different routes here. So the routes which are defined here, so either that could be same routes which are used to send the data, or it could be a different routes for every data, for example. So there depends on the network. For example, if we send the data in a network, it may follow different routes to send the data to the destination. So it may use, for example, the route that may be sending the data. You can say you can say takes minimum path to send the data, or there's a possibility that if it's the the route that is occupied, which is taking minimum path to send the data, so then it may take some other routes, so it may take to send the data to other system or to the destination. So in this way, we can have a different routes defined whenever we are using